I never thought a simple comment from my teacher could turn my world upside down. My name is Alex, and I'm a 22-year-old college student with a fairly ordinary life. Or at least that's what I thought. I've always been cautious, the type to blend in to stay under the radar. Yet beneath the surface, I've had a fascination with exploring femininity, sometimes subtle, sometimes bold, but it's always been my secret. My small apartment doubled as both a study space and my little sanctuary where I could experiment with makeup, clothes, and hairstyles in private. Nobody knew, not my friends, not my classmates, certainly not my girlfriend Emma. Emma and I have been dating for a little over a year. She's confident, striking, and one of those people whose energy fills a room without trying. I loved her because she was genuine, funny, and had this rare ability to make me feel safe and seen. But she had no idea about my secret hobby. I never imagined I'd need to tell her until now. My ordinary day started like any other. Classes, lunch with friends, a few assignments waiting in my dorm room. But today, Professor Reynolds, my literature teacher, had called me aside after class. She's one of those teachers who can see right through you. Her gaze felt like it could uncover every secret I'd ever tried to hide. "Alex," she said with a smile that was almost teasing, "I think you'd look really cute if you tried something different. You should consider auditioning for the lead role in our college play." I froze. Auditioning? Lead role? Her words made my heart race, but not just from the adrenaline of being asked. It was the underlying curiosity and the tiny thrill that bubbled up inside me at the thought of stepping into a completely different persona. My mind raced. I'd only ever experimented in private. To do this in front of an audience, in front of Emma, felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I mumbled something like, I don't know, Professor, trying to sound casual, but she shook her head gently. "No, really? I can see it. You'd be perfect. Come to the audition, just try it out. No pressure. But I really think you'd shine." Her encouragement lingered in my mind long after class ended. My usual confidence faltered at the thought of showing this side of myself publicly. I wasn't just nervous about performing. I was nervous about letting someone else see the part of me I'd kept hidden for so long. Back in my apartment, I paced. Emma was away visiting her parents for the weekend, which meant I had the house to myself. The timing felt like fate. A quiet space to explore something entirely new, without fear of interruption. I opened my wardrobe, scanning the racks of clothing I'd secretly collected over months. Soft skirts, silky blouses, and delicate shoes I'd tucked away in a corner. I hadn't planned to do anything public yet, just the thrill of transformation in private. But the seed was planted. Professor Reynolds' words replayed in my mind. "You'd be perfect, you'd shine." The idea of auditioning became a whispering temptation I couldn't ignore. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine stepping fully into that feminine persona, not just behind closed doors, but in front of people who didn't know my secret. The thought sent a shiver of both excitement and fear down my spine. I sat in front of my mirror, picking up a soft, pale pink blouse. The fabric felt like liquid silk between my fingers. A skirt followed, light and flowing, paired with delicate heels I rarely dared to wear outside my room. The reflection staring back at me was both familiar and alien. I felt my heartbeat quicken, not from anxiety alone, but from the thrill of seeing a version of myself that rarely got to exist. It wasn't just the clothing, it was the makeup, the subtle contouring, the mascara that made my eyes look larger and more expressive. I hesitated as I held the brush near my cheek, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. For years, I'd hidden this side of myself, but today something shifted. For the first time, I felt the intoxicating pull of transformation, not just in appearance, but in confidence, in the way I carried myself, in the tiny flickers of empowerment that came from embracing a secret part of my identity. The apartment, usually so familiar and mundane, seemed suddenly like a stage. The walls that held my hidden hobbies became the backdrop for something daring. And as I took a deep breath, I realized this wasn't just about auditioning for a play. It was about exploring a side of myself that had long been silent, waiting for the right moment to be seen. And then came the thought that made my stomach twist. What if Emma found out? She had always loved my steady, dependable side, And what if she couldn't understand this? What if she laughed, or worse, left me? The fear gnawed at me, but it was strangely balanced by the thrill, the idea that maybe she'd see me in a new light, maybe even be proud of me for stepping into this brave, bold version of myself. I spent hours in front of the mirror that evening. Each layer of clothing, each stroke of makeup, each tilt of my head as I practiced my expressions was a step further into a world I'd only glimpsed in secret. And by the time the clock ticked past midnight, I realized something profound. I wasn't just trying on a costume or experimenting with makeup. I was discovering a version of myself that had always existed, waiting for the right moment to shine. Tomorrow I would audition. And tomorrow I would step into a new identity, one that blurred the lines between who I had been and who I could become. And I knew, without a doubt, that once I started this journey, nothing would ever be the same. The morning of the audition arrived with a nervous flutter that I could feel in my stomach from the moment I woke. I lay in bed for what felt like an eternity, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would feel like to walk into the theater dressed as the character Professor Reynolds envisioned. My hands twitched as I thought about choosing the right outfit, the right hairstyle, the right makeup. I had always experimented in private, but today, it wouldn't be just me in front of the mirror. The first challenge was convincing myself to cross the threshold of full transformation. I retreated into my apartment, shutting the door behind me as if it were a protective shield against the judgment of the world. I began sorting through my carefully selected wardrobe, soft pastels, flowing skirts, delicate blouses that whispered femininity in every stitch. My fingers lingered on a pale blue dress, one I had only worn once for a private experiment. There was something about it, it made me feel both delicate and daring. I examined the skirt in the mirror, running my hands along the fabric, imagining how it would sway as I moved. The excitement I felt mingled with a sharp pang of anxiety. What if I looked ridiculous? What if Emma never understood? The fear of being judged, of being exposed, gnawed at the edges of my excitement, but I pushed it aside. This was about exploration, about stepping into a persona I had never allowed myself to embrace fully. The transformation began in earnest. I slid the dress over my head, feeling the soft fabric settle against my skin. Each movement made me more aware of how much of myself I was revealing, even if no one else could see yet. Next came the shoes, delicate heels that made my calves tense with unfamiliarity, forcing me to adjust my balance and posture. I caught my reflection and couldn't help but feel a thrill at the subtle shift in my silhouette. I was taller, more elegant, and undeniably different from the usual version of myself that walked the halls of my college. Makeup was the final piece of the puzzle. I started with foundation, smoothing it carefully over my skin, watching as my face transformed from familiar to almost unrecognizable. The mascara was the hardest. It took precision and patience, and as I blinked through the thickening lashes, I felt an odd mixture of pride and vulnerability. Every stroke of eyeliner, every brush of blush, was a declaration. Today, I was stepping fully into another identity. I studied my reflection for a long moment. The person staring back at me felt alive in a way that Alex rarely did. My posture changed, my movement softened, my expression became more animated, and I could feel the character forming inside me, the heroine I was supposed to become. Yet, alongside the thrill, fear lingered. What if someone saw me before I could control the transformation fully? The thought of Emma walking in unexpectedly tightened a knot in my chest. I had rehearsed the audition lines in my head, whispering them quietly to myself so no sound escaped the apartment. My voice was softer, lighter than usual, and I had to adjust my tone repeatedly to make it sound convincing. The duality of my persona weighed heavily. Alex, the reserved student, and this new version, delicate, expressive, and undeniably feminine. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing the thrill of transformation against the fear of exposure. Hours passed as I practiced walking in heels, adjusting the dress, and perfecting the character's expressions. I experimented with different hairstyles, settling finally on soft waves that framed my face and softened my jawline. I applied the final touches to my makeup, blending the colors with a delicate hand. Each layer of preparation brought a new surge of excitement, but also a sharper awareness of the stakes. One wrong move, one slip, and a secret I had guarded so carefully could unravel in an instant. By the time I heard a soft knock at the door, my heart leapt into my throat. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the sudden sound made me freeze mid-adjustment. "Just a neighbor?" I whispered to myself, but the fear lingered. I edged toward the door, heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor, and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Relief washed over me, but the sense of suspense remained. Every sound in the apartment now felt amplified, every shadow suspicious. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of why I was doing this. The audition was more than a test of acting ability. It was a test of courage, of stepping into an identity that had always existed only in the privacy of my apartment. I wasn't just performing a role. I was confronting the part of myself that craved expression, that wanted to exist beyond secrecy. Each step I took toward leaving my apartment was both literal and metaphorical, a step into vulnerability and self-discovery. The bus ride to the theater felt surreal. Every glance from strangers seemed to linger longer than it should. Every reflection in the bus windows made me flinch. I clutched my bag tightly, holding onto the familiar weight as a tether to reality. Yet, beneath the tension, a thrill coursed through me. I was doing something daring, stepping into a world that few had ever seen, and the very act of being seen was intoxicating. At the theater, I waited in a room filled with other students, many of whom had arrived for auditions in standard, safe clothing. I felt a surge of self-consciousness. My heels clicked against the floor as I walked, drawing subtle but noticeable attention. I adjusted my posture instinctively, smoothing my dress and catching glimpses of my reflection in the mirrors lining the room. Each glimpse reminded me of the duality I was juggling: Alex, the reserved student, and the heroine I was becoming. Professor Reynolds appeared, her eyes lighting up as they landed on me. "Alex, you look wonderful," she said warmly, and for a moment, my fear melted. Her approval was a balm, validating the hours of preparation, the nerves, the secrecy, and the vulnerability. Yet, even with her praise, the weight of what I had revealed about myself settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just about acting anymore. It was about identity, exposure, and the thrill of stepping into a persona I had longed to explore. As the auditions began, I felt every nerve in my body tense. Each line I delivered was a performance of both skill and self-discovery. Every movement, every glance, every inflection of voice was a test of how fully I could inhabit this character while managing the constant, gnawing awareness of being seen. My heart pounded with excitement and fear, an intoxicating cocktail that made the experience both exhilarating and terrifying. Hours passed. Auditions ended. The room emptied, leaving me with a sense of quiet accomplishment. I had done it. I had stepped into a persona that had always existed only in secret, and for a fleeting moment, I had felt complete. Yet the suspense lingered. Would I be cast? Could I maintain this balance between Alex and the heroine in my daily life? And, perhaps most pressingly, what would Emma think if she ever discovered this side of me? As I left the theater and walked back to my apartment, the world seemed different. Every reflection, every passerby, every sound carried a new weight. I had transformed in more ways than one, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And yet, the journey had only begun. The audition had opened a door to a life I had only glimpsed before, a life of risk, excitement, and self-expression. Back at my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, heels still on, heart still racing. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a simmering tension, a promise of what was to come. Transformation wasn't just a private hobby anymore. It was a challenge, a thrill, and a secret that could unravel at any moment. And deep down, I knew that my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. The days following the audition were a mix of restless anticipation and quiet obsession. I couldn't stop replaying every movement, every line, every flicker of expression that had crossed my face in front of Professor Reynolds and the audition panel. The thrill of being seen as someone else, the heroine, still coursed through me like electricity, but it was accompanied by an undercurrent of fear. I had been cast. Not just as an extra, not as a background character, but as the lead. The words from Professor Reynolds rang in my ears the moment she called me into her office to deliver the news. "Alex, you were perfect. I don't think anyone else could embody the character like you do. You're the heroine." My stomach twisted, half with elation and half with panic. Lead role meant constant attention, rehearsals, and eventually performing in front of the whole college. It meant no private sanctuary, no quiet corner where I could explore my persona in safety. And worst of all, it meant Emma would likely see me sooner rather than later. The rehearsal room became my second home. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting every twitch, every gesture, every inch of transformation. Every day, I walked in as Alex and left as the heroine, soft, graceful, expressive. Each rehearsal demanded that I embody the role fully, from posture to voice inflection, from delicate hand gestures to fluid movement. And with each session, the heroine wasn't just a character. She became a part of me, blending seamlessly with the Alex that existed behind closed doors. But the higher I rose in confidence, the more precarious my balance became. One afternoon, while practicing a particularly emotional monologue, I heard the sound of the theater door clicking open unexpectedly. My heart skipped a beat. Alex. It was Emma. I froze. The heroine in me wanted to continue, to embrace the moment, but Alex, the part of me that feared exposure, panicked. My heels clicked nervously against the wooden floor as I adjusted the skirt, hoping she wouldn't notice. But Emma's eyes were sharp, instantly assessing every detail. Hey," I stammered, voice caught somewhere between Alex and the heroine. Emma's lips curved into a subtle, curious smile. "I didn't know rehearsals were today. You look different." Different. Just one word, but it carried all the weight of judgment, curiosity, and threat. I felt the room constrict around me, my reflection in the mirrors suddenly mocking. I had to make a choice: retreat, hide, or embrace what I had become. I chose to stay. I swallowed my fear and forced a smile, stepping fully into the heroine's persona. I'm rehearsing for the play. Professor Reynolds thought I'd be perfect for the lead role. I explained, voice soft, careful. Emma tilted her head, studying me. Her eyes flicked from my skirt to my heels, to the subtle curl of my hair and the faint shimmer of blush on my cheeks. "Wow, you really do look cute." The words hit me like a lightning bolt. Part relief, part terror. Relief that she didn't react with disgust. Terror that she could now see a side of me I had desperately tried to keep hidden. Over the next few days, rehearsals intensified. Every line, every step, every expression demanded perfection. Professor Reynolds was meticulous, guiding me through moments of vulnerability, grace, and raw emotion. She encouraged me to lean fully into the heroine's persona, praising subtle movements, the tilt of my head, the gentle sway of my skirt. Each compliment was a spark, igniting both pride and fear. The suspense grew as I navigated dual lives. By day, I was Alex, calm and composed. By rehearsal, I became the heroine, delicate and expressive. By night, I practiced in front of the mirrors, perfecting every angle, every gesture, knowing that one misstep could expose me entirely. The apartment became a stage of tension, every sound amplified. I tiptoed across floors, adjusted skirts mid-step, and double-checked makeup before bedtime. Then came the night of the first full dress rehearsal. I had meticulously prepared every detail: dress, shoes, hair, makeup, even the subtle jewelry I wore to complete the transformation. My reflection stared back, confident yet vulnerable. This was it, the moment where Alex and the heroine fully merged. I stepped onto the stage, feeling the hardwood beneath my heels, the weight of expectation pressing down on my shoulders. Professor Reynolds watched intently, guiding my movements, whispering encouragement. Everything felt fluid, natural, until I heard a noise from the wings. A shadow moved. I froze, heart hammering. The prop curtain trembled slightly as a figure stepped forward. It was one of the students' stagehands, early for rehearsal. My heel caught on the floor, sending a soft thud echoing through the empty theater. Panic surged, my face heating, my hands trembling. I had to remain composed, embody the heroine fully, or risk complete exposure. The stagehand smiled nervously. Sorry, didn't mean to. I forced a graceful bow, voice steady, no problem. Just rehearsing. As he walked away, relief washed over me, but only for a moment. My mind raced with every possible scenario of exposure. What if Emma came back unexpectedly? What if someone recognized me? The tension became almost unbearable, a constant undercurrent beneath the thrill of transformation. And then, the twist I hadn't anticipated. Professor Reynolds asked me to read an emotionally charged monologue in front of the entire rehearsal group. This wasn't just any performance. This was a full display of vulnerability, expression, and presence. My heart raced. I could feel the duality in me screaming to be reconciled. The Alex who feared judgment, the heroine who craved expression. I stepped forward, took a deep breath, and let the words flow. Each sentence carried both the character's story and my own secret journey. The room went silent. Eyes watched me, and for a fleeting moment, I felt completely exposed. But then came the unexpected. Applause soft at first, then growing. Professor Reynolds nodded approvingly, a warm smile lighting her face. I had succeeded. Yet the suspense remained. Back in my apartment that night, I replayed every detail of the rehearsal. Every flicker of fear, every surge of confidence, every glance from peers and stagehands, each one a reminder of the thin line I walked between secrecy and revelation. The heroine within me had fully emerged, but Alex's fear of exposure lingered, gnawing at the edges. The final test loomed, the dress rehearsal before the entire college. I would have to maintain composure, grace, and secrecy, even under the most scrutinizing eyes. Every step, every gesture, every line was a gamble. Would I be admired, or would my secret unravel? Would Emma see and understand, or would she recoil? The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, with myself, with my fears, and with the world around me. And deep down, I knew that once the dress rehearsal began, there would be no turning back. The heroine was ready to shine, but Alex's heart was filled with tension, suspense, and the lingering fear of exposure. The night of the full dress rehearsal had arrived, and the theater buzzed with anticipation. Lights glinted off the polished floors, and the faint scent of stage makeup and fabric filled the air. I stood in the wings, dressed in the pale blue gown that had become my signature for this role. My heels clicked softly, a rhythmic reminder of the delicate balance I had to maintain between Alex and the heroine. Professor Reynolds moved through the room, adjusting props, offering encouragement to other students, and finally stopping to look at me. Her eyes were sharp but kind, filled with that same mix of expectation and warmth that had first drawn me into this journey. "Alex," she said, "tonight is your night. Show everyone who the heroine truly is. But remember, every glance, every movement, everything matters." I nodded, swallowing hard. The thrill and terror coiled inside me like a spring, ready to burst. I could feel the heroine emerging fully now, the persona I had nurtured in secret coming alive under the stage lights. But lurking beneath it all was Alex, the part of me terrified of exposure, of judgment, of losing control. The rehearsal began smoothly. Lines flowed, gestures matched, expressions resonated with the character's emotional depth. I moved across the stage, each step calculated yet fluid, my reflection in the polished floor reminding me of the duality I carried. The heroine was poised, graceful, commanding attention in a way I had never experienced outside of this world. And then it happened. A sudden, sharp knock at the backstage door froze me mid-step. My pulse spiked. Who could it be at this hour? Emma? A professor? A curious student? The uncertainty sliced through me, making the heels I wore feel like knives pressing into my feet. I peered through the curtain, heart hammering. Shadows shifted, and a familiar figure stepped into the dim light.
Emma.
My girlfriend. Her eyes widened slightly as they landed on me, and I could see the flicker of confusion, curiosity, and something unreadable. Was it admiration?
Concern?
Judgment? Alex. Her voice was soft, uncertain. I froze, unsure whether to step forward, retreat, or try to explain. The words caught in my throat, my dual identity clashing violently. The heroine within me wanted to move gracefully, to continue embodying every aspect of the character. Alex wanted to vanish, to hide behind the comfort of normalcy, to retreat to a safe corner where nothing could threaten my secret. "Hi," I managed, voice trembling slightly but holding a soft, feminine edge I had perfected over weeks of rehearsal. Emma's gaze swept over the dress, the heels, the subtle makeup. The room seemed to shrink around us, the stage lights harsh and unyielding, exposing every detail. She stepped closer, and my heart threatened to leap from my chest. Every step she took amplified the suspense. Every glance magnified the tension. I didn't know about this, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. There was no judgment yet, no laughter, only a trace of shock mingled with fascination. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. I wanted to try it. The audition, the role, it's more than just acting. It's something I've wanted to explore for a long time. Emma nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I could feel her analyzing every inch of me, trying to reconcile the Alex she knew with the heroine standing before her. My heels wobbled slightly as I shifted my weight, a tiny slip that made my skirt sway precariously. The heroine persona faltered for a fraction of a second, a symbolic moment that reflected the vulnerability of my dual identity. Before I could respond further, Professor Reynolds appeared from across the stage, her expression sharp. "Alex, ready for your final scene?" The timing was brutal. Emma's presence added a weight I hadn't anticipated. I had to perform now, under scrutiny from every angle, and with my secret laid bare before the person I cared about most. My mind raced. Could I maintain composure? Would I crumble, exposing not just the heroine, but the Alex I had tried so desperately to keep private? I nodded, forcing a smile that masked the whirlwind of fear, excitement, and exhilaration inside me. As I stepped onto the stage, I felt every heartbeat echoing in my chest, every muscle tense yet precise. The heroine emerged fully, flowing into the lines, gestures, and expressions that had been practiced over countless hours. I moved with elegance, voice steady, eyes bright, yet every second was underscored by the unspoken tension of Emma's gaze. And then, as I reached the climax of my monologue, my heel caught on a stage prop. Time seemed to stretch. The skirt slipped slightly at the edge, a subtle but dangerous exposure. My heart froze. Emma gasped softly, and Professor Reynolds' eyes widened. In that moment, everything teetered on the edge. The secret, the performance, the fragile balance of my dual identity. I froze mid-motion, caught between panic and instinct. Do I correct it? Do I retreat? Do I continue, risking everything? The room held its breath with me. And then, the scene ended with an abrupt knock at the theater doors. I spun toward the sound, heart hammering. Shadows moved outside the glass, and I realized I wasn't just facing Emma anymore. Someone or something was coming in. My secret, my carefully maintained persona, and the heroine I had cultivated for weeks now hung by a thread. The lights dimmed, leaving only the shadows of the hallway and the faint outline of a figure approaching. My breath caught. Every nerve in my body screamed, but I couldn't move. Alex and the heroine were frozen together, suspended in suspense. And then the door creaked open,